The coral lips had a look of unutterable sadness, and the long lashes swept over white cheeks. He could not take his eyes from her now that he had looked. How lovely, and how fitting for the delightful youth by his side! Now that he thought of it, she was like him, only smaller and more delicate, of course. A sudden, fierce, ridiculous feeling of envy filled Gordon's heart. Why couldn't he have known and loved a girl like that? Why had Julia Bentley been forever in his pathway as the girl laid out for his choice? He looked at her with such intensity that a couple of dear old sisters who listened to the prayer with their eyes wide open whispered one to the other: "Just see him look at her! How he must love her! Wasn't it beautiful that he should come right from the steamer to the church and never see her till now for the first time in 10 long years? It's so romantic." "Yes," whispered the other, "and I believe it will last. He looks at her that way. Only I do dislike that way of arranging the hair on his face. But then it's foreign, I suppose. He'll probably get over it if they stay in this country." A severe old lady in the seat in front turned a reprimanding chin toward them, and they subsided. Still Gordon continued to gaze. Then the bride became aware of his look, raised her eyes, and they were full of tears. They gave him one reproachful glance that shot through his soul like a sword, and her lashes drooped again. By some mysterious control over the law of gravity, the tears remained unshed, and the man's gaze was turned aside, but that look had done its mighty work. All the experiences of the day rushed over him, and seemed to culminate in that one look. It was as if the reproach of all things had come upon him. The hurt in the white dog's eyes had touched him. The perfect courage in the appeal of the child's eyes had called forth his deepest sympathy. But the tears of this exquisite woman wrung his heart. He saw now that the appeal of the dog and the child had been the opening wedge for the look of a woman which tore self from him and flung it at her feet for her to walk upon. And when the prayer was ended he found that he was trembling. He looked vindictively at the innocent youth beside him as the soft rustle of the audience and the little breath of relief from the bridal party betokened the next stage in the ceremony. What had this innocent-looking youth done to cause tears in those lovely eyes? Was she marrying him against her will? He was only a boy, anyway. What right had he to suppose he could care for a delicate creature like that? He was making her cry already, and he seemed to be utterly unconscious of it. What could be the matter? Gordon felt a desire to kick him. Then it occurred to him that inadvertently he might have been the cause of her tears. He, supposedly the best man, who had been late and held up the wedding no knowing how long. Of course it wasn't really his fault, but by proxy it was, for he now was masquerading as that unlucky best man, and she was very likely reproaching him for what she supposed was his stupidity. He had heard that women cried sometimes from vexation, disappointment, or excitement. Yet in his heart of hearts he could not set those tears, that look, down to so trivial a cause. They had reached his very soul, and he felt there was something deeper there than mere vexation. There had been bitter reproach for a deep wrong done. The glance had told him that. All the manhood in him rose to defend her against whoever had hurt her. He longed to get one more look into her eyes to make quite sure, and then, if there was still appeal there, his soul must answer it. For the moment his commission, his ridiculous situation, the real peril to his life and trust, were forgotten. The man Jefferson had produced a ring and was nudging him. It appeared that the best man had some part to play with that ring. He dimly remembered somewhere hearing that the best man must hand the ring to the bridegroom at the proper moment. But it was absurd for them to go through the farce of doing that when the bridegroom already held the golden circlet in his fingers. Why did he not step up like a man and put it upon the outstretched hand? That little white hand just in front of him there, so timidly held out with its gloved fingers tucked back, like a dove crept out from its covert unwillingly. But that Jefferson man still held out the ring stupidly to him, and evidently expected him to take it. Silly youth! There was nothing for it but to take it and hand it back, of course. He must do as he was told, and hasten that awful ceremony to its interminable close. He took the ring and held it out, but the young man did not take it again. Instead, he whispered, "Put it on her finger." Gordon frowned. Could he be hearing right? Why didn't the fellow put the ring on his own bride? If he were being married, he would knock any man down that dared to put his wife's wedding ring on for him. Could that be the silly custom now, to have the best man put the bride's ring on? How unutterably out of place! But he must not make a scene, of course. The little timid hand, so slender and white, came a shade nearer, as if to help, and the ring finger separated itself from the others. He looked at the smooth circlet. It seemed too tiny for any woman's finger. Then, reverently, he slipped it on, with a strange, inexpressible longing to touch the little hand. While he was thinking himself all kinds of a fool, and was enjoying one of his intermittent visions of Julia Bentley's expressive countenance interpolated on the present scene, a strange thing happened. There had been some low murmurs and motions, which he had not noticed because he thought his part of this very uncomfortable affair was about concluded, when lo and behold, the minister and the young man by his side both began fumbling for his hand, and among them they managed to bring it into position and place in its astonished grasp the little timid hand that he had just crowned with its ring. As his fingers closed over the bride's hand, there was such reverence, such tenderness in his touch, that the girl's eyes were raised once more to his face, this time with the conquered tears in retreat, but all the pain and appeal still there. He looked, and involuntarily he pressed her hand the closer, as if to promise aforetime whatever she would ask. Then, with her hand in his, and with the realization that they two were detached, as it were, from the rest of the wedding party, standing in a little center of their own, his senses came back to him, and he perceived, as in a flash of understanding, that it was they who were being married. There had been some terrible, unexplainable mistake, and he was stupidly standing in another man's place, taking life vows upon himself. The thing had passed from an adventure of little moment into a matter of life tragedy, two life tragedies, perhaps. What should he do? With the question came the words, "I pronounce you husband and wife," and "Let no man put asunder." End of chapter 3.